Welcome to the Resume Storyteller, bringing you interviews with industry experts, regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Well, guys, I have with me today Varshaa Thapiyal, also goes by Varshaa RT on LinkedIn, and she is a resume writer for military to corporate career transitions. Varshaa specializes in resume writing for military professionals and their families who are looking to transition into the corporate world. As a military spouse with a decade of corporate experience spanning operations, quality, and client services, she's seen up close the challenges that those leaving the military face during a career transition. She jumped full-time into the world of resume writing after years of witnessing veterans struggle to articulate their experiences and accomplishments on paper. And today she's passionate about helping them and their families to reach the interview stage through powerfully written resumes, LinkedIn profiles, cover letter, and much more. So Varshaa, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure following your content on LinkedIn, and I'm so happy to have you on this podcast.
Thank you, Virginia. It's an absolute honor. Like I told you already, you're one of those few people that I started following on LinkedIn, and I learned a lot from you. So I do consider you as my mentor, and I have goosebumps as I say that right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is so kind. And as I told you, I love interviewing people on this podcast that have been in the, on the corporate side more recently than I, because you've had more recent frontline experiences, and it just enriches what I learn and what our listeners learn. So thank you. And so I wanted to ask you, so first off, you heard me give the quick overview of what you do, but tell me a little bit more about how you came to become a resume writer, because most people don't wake up when they're children saying, this is what I want to do for my career.
That is so true. So because I'm a military spouse and having seen, both the work environments, I worked in the corporates for a decade. And then because I was able to map that there is a lack of awareness on both the fronts. Corporates are not aware of what military professionals do and what are the appointments that they have in the military. And likewise in the military, they don't know how the corporate functions and what are the hierarchy and other things are like. So when friends and family would visit me, they would also, a lot of times they will ask me that, how does the corporate function? If we were to quit our service today, where is it that we'll be placed? And do you have similar hierarchy? And how's the culture? So because we move very frequently, so we move every 2 years, I had to kind of switch my career. And then while I was thinking of switching, I also thought that what is it that I can do that can add meaning to whatever I take up? Because work from home is very different from it's like the full-time work is absolutely different from what a work from home life is going to be. So these are some of the things. Then I started. So I always was creative, and I used to write, not meaningful content, but then I used to write. Then I started exploring content writing. So I wrote for an online magazine for about a year, but that didn't interest me because it was boring. So I was kind of writing for a travel portal, and it was all about travel. So it wasn't challenging, and there was nothing different that I could do through that. And one fine day, I got lucky, got an offer for resume writing. And though I had never written for anybody else other than my own self, and that resume I don't even want to look back at today.
Oh, I know, right?
But then I gave that a try, and then that was it. And because military folks need a resume writer who understand their jargons and their environment, and to be able to articulate that in a corporate resume. And that's where it happened. And this has been my journey so far. So from corporate operations to content writing to now a military specific resume writer.
Oh, that's interesting. So I don't know if you know this, but I spent years doing content writing before. I wrote resumes for free. I didn't know anyone did it for a living, but I wrote for travel websites and fitness websites and tons of stuff of which I had no expertise on, but because I loved writing, I would love to research and then write about it. And people paid me to do it. So yeah, I wrote for USA Today Travel, but I never got to, I I never got to go anywhere. I did it all from my home.
I think you have to do your research and you kind of learn through the way, and that's when you come to the niche whatever you want to do. So there is a learning through the process that got me here this far.
Yep, no, absolutely. And so on LinkedIn, I saw that you have two different resume writing roles, one working with women job seekers and the other with military veterans looking to transition. Can you sort of walk listeners through how you serve those different types of clients?
Sure, yes. So the two platforms are, one is Workcera and the other is Military to Corporate. So Workcera is an online platform. So I started, most of my content writing projects have come through Workcera. So it is an online platform only for the women workforce who've left their corporate jobs and are working from home or probably sitting idle at home, but wasting that talent. So again, the founder is again a military spouse, and she kind of motivated me to join Workcera. So I'm registered there as a resume writer and content writer. So a lot of projects, initially I started with them. I've done a lot of projects, content writing projects with them, and resume writing also. And through the process, then I collaborated with Military to Corp, which is a veteran placement firm in India, and where I am heading the resume writing division. So collaborating with them to see the short form that we say for Military to Corp, collaborating with them has been the best ever career move that I made for myself, because, I've never been a recruiter. So I've been a hiring manager, but not the base level recruiter, and even nowhere in the hierarchy through the recruiting process. So I don't know what recruiters actually do. What do they look at? So I didn't know before that, but now I get first-hand information from the recruiters who work with them to see. So we are a close-knit team of recruiters and veteran hiring experts. And this brings me constructive feedback on the resumes that I write, that what are the military-friendly clients looking at in the resumes, and what should a transitioning military resume include. And it's like from the horse's mouth, it can't get better than that, because I am not at the front end. They're the base level recruiters who can get me that feedback. And, I work with both the platforms, but Military to Corp kind of has my heart, because I'm representing the community and I'm doing something for the fraternity, which is meaningful. And when I get to know that the veterans have got placed in different places, kind of, it uplifts the spirit that I have, the passion that I am driven with. And that's how it is, and these two platforms.
I love that. I wasn't familiar with either of those websites, so that was really interesting to me.
Yes, because I leverage the freelancing bit of my work style. I'm a freelancer with both the setups, but then with Workcera, I work for corporate professionals, and here I totally work with veterans. So it kind of gives me a mix, because I'm writing for veterans. I need to have real-time experience with corporate professionals also, because otherwise, how will I map? So that's right. Learning should go on.
So how would you say? Let me back up. A lot of our listeners are live all over the world and are targeting roles all over the world. I work primarily with U.S. and people targeting multinationals. You're based in India. How would you say that resumes in the U.S. and India are the same, and in which ways are they different?
Now that I've written for corporate professionals from across the globe, and I haven't really found a stark difference apart from, the presentation bit of it. So in India, adding a photograph to your resume is not any discrimination. It's not an issue. Though, because I've learned from global practices, that adding a photograph doesn't really help. Instead, use that space for something else more valuable that you would want to tell the recruiter. But if at all you add a photograph, it's not taken otherwise. So this is one difference that I feel. So nothing is very stringent here, but then things are moving towards, global ways of presenting a resume. So I recommend using that available space for other content. And then, of course, you have your LinkedIn profile if the recruiter wants to look at your photograph. So these kind of things, but not really a significant difference that I've seen between how we present.
You're seeing a move to more global.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a deal breaker to add the picture, but your preference is to remove it because you're right, it's valuable real estate that maybe could be used for something else.
Of course, because whatever I've learned through the process, why not pass on that information? There's no point keeping all that with me. So I believe in sharing. And so every resume that I write, a person could apply either India or abroad, anywhere. So it's based on global best practices.
Okay. And in terms of LinkedIn, the way we're trained here in the US to write LinkedIn profiles is that it needs to be very conversational, first person tone, very achievement focused. And I'm curious if culturally, if that is accepted also in terms of writing LinkedIn profiles for Indian professionals, or is it a little different?
Well, that takes me back to May 2020 when I started my journey on LinkedIn. So my profile was there since 2009, but I really leveraged it after May 2020. And so it is still kind of a larger percentage of it would be considered as a job seeking platform, but the awareness is now happening. So like it happened for me, like I am now educating other people. So the things are happening, things are rolling, we're doing lives and we're doing, certain things on the platform. There is content being created. So I see that move happening now, and we're still in the learning process. We're still developing, and now with LinkedIn being introduced in Hindi, which is a native language. So I believe that the usage and implementation should gear up in the coming years.
Well, I think that everywhere people are still awakening. I think I saw a stat. I can't remember who shared it, but it was something like 89 or 90% of all users on LinkedIn are just sort of lurkers and observers. And only something like 5 or 6% use it to its full potential and really, really engage on it. And I think that's true. That's a global stat. Yeah.
That reminded me of a conversation where a veteran told me that, ma'am, we look up your content and it's really helpful. And I did my resume because of your content and it worked out. But I am a silent observer and admirer of your work. So that is, one thing that people are not aware that what is it that needs to be written? How do we go about LinkedIn? That is something that needs to be plugged. And once that's done, the number of users that are there in India is, immense. It just needs that direction on, how do you get started with LinkedIn?
Right. Yeah, but you're right. There are millions watching, even if they're not commenting or liking, they're there. And I think that's important to remember. And so it sounds like you're saying that the conversational approach resonates there just like it does other places.
It does. So a lot of profiles you will see will be written in like a third person. That's the majority of things that I see. But otherwise, the accomplishments and, things that you should be talking about, your wins and everything, that all of that is there. It's just the language that needs to be tweaked a little bit to, showing some personality in your profile.
When I first started writing LinkedIn profiles, you could literally cut and paste the resume. It was super conservative in the language, very third person. And then it slowly started evolving industry by industry. Like the more creative industries started embracing a different style. And then it finally trickled down to more, traditional industries. So.
Oh yeah, it does.
An interesting evolution.
Process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it takes patience. I took about 2 months to just do my headline. So it just
so we've talked about resume, we've talked about LinkedIn as it, some differences and some similarities between the two countries. What about job search best practices that are often discussed on LinkedIn and in articles? Are there certain practices that maybe don't apply well in the Indian market, maybe for many different reasons, or is it same strategies are effective, anywhere?
Not that I've come across any difference that way, because what works there should work here, because in overall job search is the same thing, just that you need to have a strategy that works for you as a person, as an individual. But otherwise, from resumes to interviews, the process is largely similar. And I don't think that anything that you would prep up with in the US will be different from what it is in India. The process is largely just the same, because the resume that I write, it worked there also, it worked here also. If there were strategies, because I keep reading, I'm not a coach, but then I keep reading about what coaches have to say. So it does apply to India also. I don't see a difference in the strategy per se.
Okay, that's good to know. So you and I both work with many that are transitioning from military to civilian life. Is there something that you see in job search or in writing these that has proven to be, a bigger challenge for them? What is challenging about serving, writing for these clients and helping them land?
Because of the environment, because of the military took up the collaboration, I'm better aware today. And because I keep reading, the challenges are similar. But the only difference that I see largely, though it's applicable to other countries also, but in India, a serving person cannot be on social media. And that becomes a big hindrance and causes that lack of awareness, because you can't be on LinkedIn and you can't read about other people. You
so they're not allowed to be on the dome. They can't be on any social media, or they can't be on LinkedIn?
Any social media. So we recommend that once you start transitioning, that's when I take the LinkedIn workshops for our veterans to create their own profile, it needs to be started from the scratch, from creating a profile for yourself. So it's a big process in itself, because first you have to create a profile, then you have to add details to it, then you have to create your personal brand, and then networking. It takes time. So had they been
build your
on
network,
LinkedIn
all of
that. So that is one thing that I feel is challenging for them to get up with LinkedIn. So it's like building a network and at the same time doing a job search and everything in one go. So navigating through the platform takes a little time, but then I am that happy person here who is able to guide them, and with all the learning that I have, so I kind of like helping them through the process, and that's how it is. So that's the only challenge that I feel is different from from especially the US. But otherwise, everything else is the same. The lack of awareness and appointments and postings and moving every now and then. That the military jargons, all that is the same.
Now, do spouses and family members are allowed to be on? It's just if you're the actual soldier or officer, that's when you cannot be on social media, right?
True. Yeah, no, we can be. So if like I am doing right now, I'm doing what I am doing. There is no mention of my husband whatsoever. And that's how it should be, because they're serving. Right. So once you kind of retire, then things ease out a little bit. Then you're kind of free to do whatever you want to kind of explore for your job search. But at the moment, it's just me. It's just my face. It's just me. So I am getting my experience as a military spouse to what I'm doing. So I'm adding value here. But otherwise, from the personal front of it, it's kind of, I won't go that way.
Right.
So that's what it is.
Now, when I write military to civilian resumes, the biggest challenge for me is making sure that I am deciphering the terminology correctly, translating it correctly. The military has its very own unique language, lots of acronyms. Job titles are very different than in the in the corporate world, and the hierarchy are very different. Is that the same, or is that what you're dealing with?
Yes, absolutely. So my husband gets help here because wherever I get stuck, I ask him that what does this jargon. At times, people don't even realize that they're using military jargon because it's so much in their DNA. Yeah. And it does take time to translate all those jargons. But then when I write a resume, after I'm done writing that resume, the profile comes up in the light that this is what actually it is without the jargon. So it's beautiful to see what they've done and how it translates. But then translating jargons and appointments, that's really it takes efforts.
No, that's right. And sometimes I've found also that, not always, but some of the points that in the military are really important to highlight aren't always important in civilian. And I'll give you an example. I know that sometimes they'll say, okay, was responsible for leading, this many people, but then they'll say it was $6 million in assets and in equipment, and like the amount of equipment and materials that they're managing is equally important to the number of people that they are that they're in charge of. And that's something that isn't as important, I don't think, in corporate resumes. So an executive, I don't say you're in charge of 700 desks and 2,000 computers and 20 people. You just sort of focus on the headcount and the money. So it's a little different. What I've seen is that sometimes all of that additional information can clog up what you're reading and make it cluttered and harder to decipher. So I really strive to remove that.
That's true, because and to do this, I tell them that, don't write everything on your resume. Your entire history doesn't need to go. Keep it very focused to what you're targeting. Because if you were to write everything, you would only end up confusing the recruiter. So just write a very targeted resume to what you're seeking. And wherever I feel the amount is kind of, bombarding, it's kind of getting out of hands, you just say a multi-million. Say, and the numbers kind of are okay to mention, but wherever you feel it's like too large a number, just give a multi-million kind of figure to it. And just writing multi-million does the job. So kind of gives a magnitude of the responsibility that you have. And you don't need to write everything. So if you're targeting logistics, just stay with logistics. If you're targeting operations, then stay with operations. Don't mix the two. And otherwise the pages will be like 35, 40 pages. And who has the time to read all that?
No, that's so true. That's so true. And that segues into my next question, which is, a lot of times, especially people in the military, they are called on to use a variety of diverse skills. And so when they're transitioning to corporate, they could really go in a lot of different directions. It might be logistics, it might be operations, it might be project management. How do you sort of help them figure out how to navigate when they can go in lots of different ways?
I feel that is rather an advantage to them, just that they need to figure out which skills would apply. So transferable skill analysis is an important exercise here. But otherwise, I feel a diverse skill set is rather complementary, because, for a particular role, there'll be several candidates with similar kind of experience and similar skills. But then when you stand in that queue for the interview, you will sound different than the routine, because you have this, you need to portray the skills that they're looking at, plus added with the skills that you've gained in the military, which would complement their work environment. So, but you really need to reflect the skills that are required for the job. First is that, and then you kind of do your research then add that, that zing of your diversity on that resume, or when you speak to the recruiter. Kind of tell them that you're a better fitment because you have what you're looking at, and there's an icing on the cake apart from that.
Okay. So this is the most critical skills as it relates to this particular job, but all these other things make my expertise that much more valuable. Is that what you're sort of saying?
Correct.
Okay.
How is it that you're different from the others? Take that to your advantage.
I am a huge fan. I don't know if you know her, Dr. Dawn Graham. She wrote a book called Career Switchers, and she's always said that when it comes to writing a resume, you need to match first, stand out second, because that's how the reader is looking at it. And that sort of sounds like what you're saying. Be relevant, but show that the other stuff is icing on the cake. I love that.
Thank you. That's right. And you've given me a book gold, Career Switchers.
Oh gosh, it's great. Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called Career Switchers. And she was a guest of mine on my podcast. You can look her up.
Lovely.
So in the US, there is a lot of talk about discrimination when it comes to hiring practices, everything from ageism to sexism to all of the isms. I can't even think of all of them now. Is this an issue that your clients are grappling with? And if so, what are ways in which you help them to navigate it, or that you consider when you're writing their resumes?
That all of us know that biases are real, and studies have supported that claim, and particularly at the leadership level, they do exist. But I've been lucky that way to say that in my experience, I haven't faced any discrimination, nor have I heard from the clients so far, mainly because primarily I think because I'm not a coach, so I don't get to those kind of stories. But then I've been lucky to be able to perform with great leaders who believed in providing, equal opportunity to everybody. In fact, with that, I could recall a time when I was just 27-year-old, and I had a team member who was a woman, and she was 52. So neither the hiring team had a problem hiring her, and nor did I face a problem getting work done from her. So we do hear a lot of stories, but then I can only talk for myself, and all that it needs is the right fitment of skills and the attitude, and I think should not be a problem. And I've been touch wood lucky enough that I never kind of heard of any real-time discrimination, so to say.
And so that's wonderful. And do you mentioning the age thing with the 52-year-old, when you are writing a resume, because you haven't seen it, do you include all relevant roles? It doesn't matter how far back they went, or do you have a different approach for, dealing with the age question?
See, for corporate professionals, I haven't really written for anybody who was that elderly, if so to say.
Okay.
But otherwise, because we're ourselves, I'm myself nearing that age now, so it looks younger to me. But
right.
For the veterans, because I work with veterans who have 30 years of service and 35 years of service, there was a general that I had written for. So for them, I think it is, I don't go beyond 12 years at the max, because the early years of appointment only gets you learning. It doesn't add to your expertise. It's the middle level. It's after the middle level that you learn more and you grow in the process. So I go back to about 12 years and leave the rest, because they have an advantage that, if they work for 10 years, it's just the same organization. So I don't do a split for every 2 years, but then I keep it relevant to the domain that they're targeting. And then I go back about, if they have 20 years experience, then probably whatever they're targeting, depending on that. But otherwise, a max 12 years is what I take.
That's so interesting. I hadn't thought about the fact that those early years, that's where a lot of, like you said, a lot of learning is still taking place, but the last 12-ish is where the leadership is happening, or
Correct.
where they're shaping policy, things like that.
Correct, because strategy implementation and all of that will only have once you get the brains. And in the early years of life, you're only polishing your skills. That's where you're kind of learning to grow. But then once you get that one step to a team leader, I'd say in the corporate hierarchy, if you say that's the first management level promotion that you get, after that is when, you get into strategy and implementation and financials. But before that, you're like a youngster, even if you goof up, there are managers to support you. So that's why early years of service are kind of okay for the learning aspect. They're more important for freshers, I would say.
Right. Oh, I like that approach. And I hadn't thought about that in the military, because you're right. You're taking orders in those early years. You don't have a ton of opportunity to be as creative and do some other things. Right. So sort of closing things out, if someone approaches you and says, I am getting ready to begin a job hunt, what are one or two tools that a job seeker or a military to civilian career person cannot be without during their career journey? What would you say?
So I often do a lot of posts about these, and my favorite term here is the job search armor. So you need to have the right tools, the right armor in that strategy. And two important things that I feel is, one is a resume, and the other is LinkedIn. Why resume? Why? Because even if you want to not utilize LinkedIn, so for example, because your veterans get on LinkedIn really late. So if you're already networking offline, you will still need a resume to submit for people to read. So resume is important. And then your LinkedIn profile, because beyond what you know offline, how is it that you expand your network? So getting there on LinkedIn and coming out as a thought leader is important. So these are two things that you cannot do away with in your job search journey, is what I feel. And it will rather complement, if you have a good offline network, it will rather complement you, because then, you're good at networking, just that you need to get there on LinkedIn and, come up, because LinkedIn has become the platform for, finding everything meaningful for your job.
And you're right. And you can expand your network so much faster. Correct. Online in a way that you just can't offline. And to me, the best part about online is you could start online, but then you can move it to offline.
Right. And what can be a better example than this, that I started following you in 2020 and right now I'm sitting here doing a podcast with you? Can't get better.
You're right. It's been 2 years and we've moved it offline. No, I love that. Okay, so Varshaa, you are getting ready to move. You are writing for 2 different companies. What is next for you in 2022?
Well, the short answer to your question is that I never plan in advance for years to come, but I just have one aim: to keep getting better at the current version of my capabilities. Because had I thought about it when I was in the corporate, I wouldn't have come this far. I wouldn't have started with resume writing. Once I did, then my aim was to get better. And that's what, learning has been something that has been there through the process. So I am a forever learner, and, the only aim is that whatever I'm doing today, I want to get better at the same thing. And tomorrow will come with more opportunities. And let's see, so a lot of work is now trickling down to me because courtesy my network and the platform. So I kind of don't plan, but then I just, the current capabilities need to get better. Otherwise, you will just stay in the, stagnant pond. And that's where I don't want to be.
Oh, I love that. So if people want to connect with you, and they can follow you on LinkedIn at Varshaa Resumes, and then I have your email listed here too, varsharesumes@gmail.com. Are those the best places to connect with you, or are there other platforms as well?
Yes, LinkedIn is the best platform to connect with me, because I've kind of channelized myself for one platform at the moment, and I don't think so. I can, I have the energy and the time with a little one to move to another platform. So if you write to me on LinkedIn, I'll respond as soon as I can.
Yes, and I can vouch for that. You respond super fast. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much. It's an absolute honor that I'm talking to you today. Absolutely loved it.
I loved it as well. And today is Holly. And can you explain to everyone what how do you say it?
Holy.
Holy. And explain what that is again. I love it. I love when you explained it to me.
Sure. It's the festival of colors that we celebrate in India. So it is a function for 2 days. So today we'll be celebrating victory of good over evil. So we'll be burning fire in the evening with, it's like a community get together. And tomorrow in the morning, we'll be playing with colors and water. And tomorrow is when it's going to end. So it's like, we're celebrating spring, and we're wishing Thanksgiving for a good harvest. So 3 things: spring, harvest, and victory of good over evil. And I love the holiday myself because, with colors and everything, it gets so much energy into the environment. Tomorrow you should visit India sometime to see the energy that it gets with it. So I love the festival for the fact that, it's all is going to be brimming with energy.
Oh, and I mean, with all the awfulness that's happening in the world right this second, this celebration is sorely needed. So thank you for joining me during this holiday.
Thanks, Arjuna. Thanks so much. I've been wanting to come, and I wanted to prepare myself the best, and, to be with the Virginia Franco that I used to follow, and now I'm connected, and now you're talking to me. So it's absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Virginia. Same to you. Thanks a lot.
You've been listening to The Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's online skim hiring and decision makers, please visit www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.